My sister walked into the funeral holding a child and said, "He called him our son," then gave the lawyer a folder. The November rain hammered against the windows of Morrison Funeral Home in downtown Atlanta as I stood beside my husband's casket, trying to hold myself together for our 3-year-old daughter Emma. The funeral parlor smelled of lilies and old wood, and the sound of hushed conversations filled the air as friends and family gathered to say goodbye to Michael. My name is Rebecca Thompson, and at 28, I never imagined I'd be a widow. Michael and I had met in college at Georgia State, married right after graduation, and built what I thought was a perfect life in our suburban Marietta home. He worked as a software engineer at a tech startup downtown, while I managed our household and cared for Emma full-time. The service had been beautiful. Pastor Williams from our Methodist church delivered a touching eulogy about Michael's kindness, his dedication to family, and his volunteer work with underprivileged kids through the local community center. Emma sat quietly beside me in her black dress, clutching the teddy bear her daddy had given her last Christmas, not fully understanding why everyone was so sad. Our families had come from across the South to be with us. Michael's parents drove down from Nashville, his aunts and uncles from Birmingham and Charlotte. My own family filled 2 entire rows, my parents, my grandparents from Savannah, cousins I hadn't seen in years. The support was overwhelming, but there was one person notably absent, my sister Diana. Diana and I had always been different. Where I was the steady, reliable one who stayed close to home, she was the wild child who left Georgia at 18 and never looked back. She'd moved to Los Angeles to pursue acting, then modeling, then whatever caught her fancy that month. Our parents worried about her constantly, but Diana always landed on her feet somehow. She sent birthday cards irregularly, called on holidays when she remembered, and visited maybe once every 2 years. When Michael died suddenly of a heart attack 3 weeks earlier, a genetic condition no one knew he had, I'd called Diana immediately. She'd cried on the phone and promised to come for the funeral, but as the days passed without hearing from her, I assumed she'd gotten caught up in whatever drama was currently consuming her life in California. So when the funeral home doors opened during Pastor Williams' closing remarks, and Diana walked in, I felt a mixture of relief and irritation. Better late than never, I thought. But as she moved down the aisle, I noticed something that made my breath catch in my throat. She was holding a child. A little boy who looked to be about 4 years old, with dark curly hair and the most striking green eyes I'd ever seen. He clung to Diana's hand, looking scared and confused by all the people in black. Diana slipped into the back row, but her presence sent whispers rippling through the congregation. I tried to focus on the pastor's final words, but my mind was racing. Who was this child? Why had Diana brought him to Michael's funeral? And why did something about his face seem so familiar? After the service, as people moved through the receiving line to offer their condolences, I kept glancing back at Diana. She stayed seated with the little boy, whispering to him softly and smoothing his hair. When most of the crowd had dispersed, she finally approached me. "Rebecca, I'm so sorry," she said, pulling me into a hug that smelled of expensive perfume and cigarettes. "I got here as fast as I could." "Who is he?" I asked, looking down at the little boy who was now hiding behind Diana's legs. Diana's face went pale. She glanced around the nearly empty funeral home, then leaned closer to me. "His name is Lucas," she whispered. "And Becca," he called Michael Daddy. The words hit me like a physical blow. I stared at her, certain I'd misheard. "What did you say?" "We need to talk privately," Diana said, her voice shaking. "There are things about Michael you don't know. Things I should have told you a long time ago." My mother appeared at my elbow, reaching for Emma. "Why don't I take Emma to get some juice from the kitchen?" she suggested, clearly sensing the tension. "You girls catch up." When we were alone except for Lucas, Diana sat heavily in one of the funeral home chairs and pulled the little boy onto her lap. "Becca, I don't know how to tell you this, so I'm just going to say it straight. Michael and we had an affair. It started about 5 years ago when I was visiting for Christmas, and it lasted longer than it should have." The funeral home seemed to spin around me. I gripped the back of a chair to steady myself. "That's impossible. Michael would never." "Lucas is his son," Diana continued, her voice barely audible. "Look at him, Becca. Really look at him. I forced myself to study the little boy's face, and my heart shattered all over again. The green eyes weren't just striking, they were exactly like Michael's. The stubborn cowlick in his dark hair was identical to the one Michael fought with every morning. The way he tilted his head when he was thinking was pure Michael Thompson. "You're lying," I whispered, but even as I said it, I knew she wasn't. "I wish I was." Diana's eyes filled with tears. "It happened at Christmas 5 years ago. We'd both been drinking, you were exhausted from being up all night with baby Emma, and I was going through a messy breakup. It was stupid and selfish and wrong, and it should have been a one-time mistake." Should have been. Diana looked down at Lucas, who was playing with the buttons on her coat. "It happened again. Several times over the next 2 years. Michael would come to LA on business trips, or I'd meet him when he traveled for conferences. He was torn up about it, Becca. He hated himself for betraying you, but he couldn't seem to stop. I felt like I was drowning. Everything I thought I knew about my life, my marriage, my husband was crumbling around me." "When did you know about Lucas?" "I found out I was pregnant 3 years ago. By then, the affair had been over for months. Michael had cut off all contact, said he couldn't keep hurting you. When I told him about the baby, he was devastated but also. I think part of him was happy. He'd always wanted more children. He told me the doctors said we couldn't have more kids after Emma," I said numbly. "That wasn't true. He couldn't bear the thought of having another child with you while he had this secret. He was supporting Lucas financially, sending money every month. He flew to LA twice a year to see him. Lucas called him Daddy because, well, he was. The funeral home felt like it was closing in on me. I thought about all those business trips Michael took, the conferences that seemed to pop up regularly. How many of them had been lies? How many times had he looked me in the eye and lied to my face? Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Michael's gone. This can't hurt him anymore, but it's destroying me." Diana reached into her purse and pulled out a manila folder. "Because of this. Michael's lawyer called me yesterday. Apparently, Michael updated his will 6 months ago." She handed me the folder with trembling hands. "He left provision for Lucas. College fund, life insurance policy, everything. His lawyer needs to meet with both of us tomorrow to discuss the estate." I opened the folder with shaking hands. The legal documents were complex, but the basic facts were clear. Michael had set aside nearly half of his life insurance payout for Lucas's future. The college fund he'd started for Emma had been split equally between both children. The house, our house, had a lien against it to ensure Lucas's financial security. "He was planning to tell you," Diana said softly. "The lawyer said Michael had been asking about the best way to handle the situation. He wanted to bring Lucas into your lives properly, to be a real family. He was just scared of losing you and Emma. So he died before he could destroy our lives himself," I said bitterly. "Becca, please don't think of it that way. Michael loved you more than anything. He made terrible mistakes, but he never stopped loving you." I looked at Lucas, who had fallen asleep in Diana's arms despite all the adult conversation swirling around him. He looked so innocent, so vulnerable. This little boy had lost his father too, and he probably understood even less about what was happening than Emma did. "What happens now?" I asked. "I don't know," Diana admitted. "I've been raising Lucas alone in LA, working as a waitress and taking whatever acting gigs I can find. Money's always tight. When Michael died, I panicked. Lucas keeps asking where Daddy went, and I don't know how to explain it. I thought. I hoped maybe you'd let me bring him to the funeral, let him say goodbye properly. And then what? You expect me to welcome you both into my home with open arms? Pretend we're one big happy family? I don't expect anything," Diana said. "I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness or your help. But Lucas deserves to know about his sister, and Emma deserves to know she has a brother. They're innocent in all this." Before I could respond, my mother returned with Emma, who ran straight to me and wrapped her arms around my legs. "Mommy, who's the little boy?" she asked, looking curiously at Lucas. I knelt down to Emma's level, my heart breaking as I struggled to find words. This is Lucas, sweetheart. He's your brother. Emma's eyes widened. I have a brother? Like Sally at school? Yes, baby. Like Sally at school. Emma looked at the sleeping Lucas with wonder. Can he come home with us? I want to show him my toys. Diana and I exchanged glances. We need to talk about that, I said carefully. That night, after the funeral reception and endless condolences from well-meaning friends and family, I found myself alone in the house Michael and I had shared for 5 years. Diana and Lucas were staying at a nearby hotel. I wasn't ready to have them in my home yet, but I also couldn't send them back to LA immediately. I walked through our house looking at everything with new eyes. The family photos on the mantelpiece that suddenly seemed like lies. The wedding picture in our bedroom that made me want to scream. The closet full of Michael's clothes that still smelled like his cologne, each piece now a reminder of his deception. But then I found something that stopped me cold. Hidden behind Michael's winter coats was a small box I'd never seen before. Inside were photos of Lucas at various ages, artwork that said, "To Daddy," in crayon, and a letter in Michael's handwriting. The letter was addressed to me, dated just 1 month before his death. My dearest Becca. If you're reading this, something has happened to me and Diana has had to tell you about Lucas. I know you must hate me right now, and you have every right to. I've been the worst kind of coward, keeping this secret for so long. I want you to know that every day I planned to tell you the truth. Every day I woke up thinking today would be the day I found the courage. But I was so afraid of losing you and Emma that I kept putting it off, thinking I could find a way to make it hurt less. There is no way to make it hurt less. I betrayed you in the worst possible way, and I will regret it for the rest of my life. But Lucas is innocent in all this. He's a beautiful, sweet little boy who deserves a family, and Emma deserves to know her brother. Diana has struggled so much raising him alone. She's actually a wonderful mother, more responsible and caring than either of us ever gave her credit for. But she needs help, and Lucas needs stability. I know it's asking the impossible, but I hope someday you might find it in your heart to let them be part of your life. Not for my sake or even for Diana's, but for the children. All my love and deepest regrets. Michael. I sat on our bedroom floor and cried until I had no tears left. Then I called Diana. I found a letter, I said when she answered. Oh God, she whispered. What did it say? I read it to her over the phone, both of us crying by the end. Becca, I need you to know something, Diana said when I finished. I didn't come here expecting anything from you. I have a return ticket to LA for tomorrow. I just wanted Lucas to be able to say goodbye to his father, and I thought you deserved to know the truth. Don't leave yet, I said, surprising myself. I need time to think, but don't leave yet. The next few days were the hardest of my life. Meeting with Michael's lawyer confirmed what I already knew. Legally, Lucas was entitled to his inheritance, and Diana would need to be involved in managing it until he came of age. But beyond the legal requirements, I had to figure out how to move forward emotionally. Emma, with the adaptability of a 3-year-old, had immediately accepted Lucas as her brother. She wanted to play with him constantly, share her toys, show him her room. Watching them together was both heartwarming and heartbreaking. They had Michael's same laugh, the same way of scrunching up their noses when they were concentrating. Diana stayed at the hotel for a week, bringing Lucas over each day so the children could spend time together. I watched her carefully during these visits, looking for signs of the selfish, irresponsible sister I'd always known. Instead, I saw a woman who was clearly devoted to her son, who was patient and kind and struggling to do right by everyone involved. Can I ask you something? I said one afternoon while the kids played in the backyard. Do you love him? Did you love Michael, or was it just physical? Diana was quiet for a long moment. I loved him, she said finally. Not the way you loved him, not with that deep, committed, build a life together love. But I loved him. He was kind to me when I was at my lowest point, he made me feel like I mattered. It wasn't just about sex, Becca. It was about feeling connected to someone who actually cared about me. But you knew he was married. You knew he had a family. I did. And I was selfish enough not to care at first. But over time, the guilt ate at both of us. That's why Michael ended it, and that's why I didn't fight him on it. We both knew what we were doing was wrong. I studied my sister's face, looking for deception but finding only remorse. What's your life like in LA? Really? Honestly? It's hard. I wait tables at a diner, audition when I can, and barely make rent most months. Lucas goes to a decent daycare, but I worry about him constantly. I have no family out there, no support system. Some months I choose between groceries and car insurance. She paused. But he's happy, Becca. Despite everything, he's a happy kid. That night, after Diana had taken Lucas back to the hotel, I called my parents and asked them to come over. I needed advice from people who loved me but could think more clearly than I could. I don't know what to do, I confessed as we sat in my living room. Part of me wants to never see Diana again, to pretend Lucas doesn't exist and try to rebuild my life. But another part of me sees how happy Emma is with her brother, and I think about that little boy growing up without his father. My mother, who had been uncharacteristically quiet since learning about the situation, finally spoke up. Honey, I'm going to tell you something I've never told anyone except your father. When you girls were little, I had an affair. I stared at her in shock. My parents had been married for 35 years and seemed rock solid. It lasted about 6 months, she continued. Your father and I were going through a rough patch, he was working long hours, and I felt neglected and unappreciated. I met someone who made me feel special again. She reached for my father's hand. When I finally came to my senses and ended it, I had to decide whether to tell your father or live with the secret. What did you do? I told him. It almost destroyed our marriage. We separated for 8 months, went to counseling, and had to rebuild everything from the ground up. But we did rebuild it, stronger than before. My father nodded. It was the hardest thing we ever went through, but also the most important. We had to learn to forgive and trust again. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because people make mistakes, my mother said. Terrible, hurtful mistakes. But that doesn't mean they're evil people, and it doesn't mean good can't come from the wreckage. She looked toward the stairs where Emma was sleeping. That little girl upstairs deserves to know her brother. And that little boy at the hotel deserves to have family who loves him. But what about Diana? How do I forgive her for what she did to my marriage? You don't have to forgive her right now, my father said. Forgiveness is a process, not a decision you make once. But you can choose to do what's best for the children while you work through your feelings about Diana. Over the next 2 weeks, I found myself spending more and more time with Lucas. Diana would bring him over in the mornings, and I'd find excuses to extend their visits. Lucas was a sweet, intelligent child who was clearly hungry for family connection. He followed Emma around like a devoted puppy, and she basked in the attention of being a big sister. More importantly, I began to see Diana differently. Away from the drama and chaos that had always surrounded her visits home, she was a devoted mother who put Lucas's needs before her own. She was patient with his questions, creative in finding ways to entertain both children, and respectful of my boundaries even when I could see she was struggling. What would you do if I asked you to stay? I said one evening as we were cleaning up after dinner. The question surprised both of us, I hadn't planned to ask it. Diana looked up from loading the dishwasher. Stay here. In Atlanta? In Georgia, at least. Maybe not in my house right away, but in the area. So the kids could grow up knowing each other. Becca, I couldn't ask you to. I'm not asking. I'm offering. Emma needs her brother, and Lucas needs stability. You need family support, and honestly, I need help figuring out how to be a single mom. Diana's eyes filled with tears. I don't have money for deposits or first month's rent. And I'd need to find a job. Michael's life insurance includes money for Lucas's support. There's enough to help you get settled, find an apartment, maybe even go back to school if you want to. Why would you do this for me? After what I did to you? I thought about my parents' story, about forgiveness being a process, about the innocent children who deserved better than the mess the adults in their lives had created. Because Lucas is Michael's son, I said finally. And despite everything, Michael was a good father to Emma. He would have been a good father to Lucas too, if he'd had the chance. I can't give Lucas his father back, but I can give him family. Diana moved to Atlanta that spring. I helped her find a small apartment about 10 minutes from our house, close enough for regular visits but far enough that we both had space to breathe. She enrolled in a community college program to become a certified pharmacy technician, stable work with good benefits that would allow her to support Lucas properly. The adjustment wasn't easy. Some days I looked at Diana and felt nothing but anger about what she'd done to my marriage. Some days Lucas would say something that reminded me so much of Michael that I'd have to leave the room to cry. Some days the whole situation felt impossible and unfair. But other days, I'd watch Emma teaching Lucas to ride a bike in our backyard, or see Diana patiently helping Emma with an art project, and I'd remember that families come in all shapes. We weren't a traditional family, but we were becoming a real one. The community response was mixed. Some of our church friends were supportive, understanding that children shouldn't suffer for adult mistakes. Others were judgmental, whispering about Diana's lifestyle and wondering how I could reward her betrayal. A few families stopped including us in social gatherings, uncomfortable with our complicated situation. But for every person who judged us, there was someone else who offered support. Mrs. Patterson next door started babysitting both kids when Diana had evening classes. The other single moms at Emma's school welcomed Diana into their informal support network. Our pediatrician, Dr. Rodriguez, went out of his way to make sure Lucas felt comfortable during his first appointment, treating him exactly like he treated Emma. 6 months after Diana moved to Atlanta, we established new traditions. Sunday dinners at my house became sacred family time. Both kids called me Mommy Becca and Diana, Mommy Diana, without any confusion about their roles. We celebrated birthdays together, shared holidays, and tag-teamed parenting duties when one of us needed a break. Do you ever regret it? Diana asked me one Sunday evening as we cleaned up after dinner. The kids were in the living room watching a Disney movie, their heads together as they shared a bowl of popcorn. Regret what? Asking us to stay. Making this work. I watched Emma and Lucas through the kitchen doorway, arguing over which movie to watch next with the casual comfort of siblings who knew they were loved and secure. I regret what happened, I said honestly. I regret that Michael felt he couldn't tell me the truth, I regret that Lucas spent his first few years without his father's presence in his daily life, and I regret that Emma will grow up without her daddy. But I don't regret this, building something positive from the wreckage. I know I can never make up for what I did, Diana said softly. But I want you to know that watching you with Lucas, seeing how you've welcomed him into your family despite everything, it's made me want to be a better person. A better mother, a better sister. You are a better person, I said, and meant it. You've proven that people can change, that they can choose to do better. 1 year after Michael's funeral, we held a memorial service in our backyard. Not a sad, formal affair, but a celebration of his life and the family he'd created, complicated as it was. We planted a garden together, Emma's sunflowers, Lucas's tomatoes, my roses, and Diana's herbs. We shared favorite memories of Michael, and for the first time, Diana felt free to talk about the father Lucas had lost. Daddy used to make me pancakes shaped like dinosaurs, Lucas told Emma solemnly as we worked in the dirt. He made me butterfly pancakes. Emma exclaimed. Maybe Mommy Becca can learn to make both kinds. Maybe I can, I agreed, smiling through tears. Looking back now, 2 years later, I realize that tragedy sometimes forces us to build something we never would have chosen, but that turns out to be exactly what we needed. Emma has the sibling she always wanted, plus an extended family network that supports her through the normal challenges of growing up without her father. Lucas has stability, love, and multiple adults invested in his success. Diana completed her pharmacy technician program and found a job at a hospital pharmacy with excellent benefits. She's been dating a nice man named James for 8 months, someone who understands our unusual family dynamic and treats both children like they're precious. She's become the responsible adult I always hoped she could be. As for me, I've learned that forgiveness isn't a single act but a daily choice. Some days it comes easily, other days I have to work at it. But I've also learned that families aren't just about blood or law, they're about the people who show up for each other, who choose to love each other despite their flaws and mistakes. If you're watching this video because you're dealing with betrayal in your own family, or because you're struggling to figure out how to move forward after discovering painful truths about someone you loved, I want you to know that there's no single right answer. Every situation is different, and what worked for us might not work for you. But I've learned that children are remarkably resilient when they feel loved and secure, that people can change when they're given the opportunity and support, and that sometimes the most broken situations can be rebuilt into something beautiful if everyone involved is willing to do the hard work. Please share your own stories in the comments below. Have you ever had to rebuild your family after a betrayal? Have you found ways to create something positive from a painful situation? Your experiences might help someone else who's going through something similar. And if this story touched you, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. We're here to share real stories about real families navigating life's complications, and we believe that sharing our experiences honestly can help all of us feel less alone in our struggles. The garden we planted in Michael's memory is thriving now. The sunflowers reach toward the sky, the tomatoes are heavy on the vine, and the roses bloom in cycles of beauty and renewal. It's become a place where Emma and Lucas play together, where Diana and I sit and talk through the challenges of co-parenting, where we remember that love can grow in unexpected places. Sometimes the best families are the ones we choose to build, piece by piece, from the broken places in our lives. Sometimes the most beautiful gardens grow in soil that's been turned over by grief, watered with tears, and tended by hands that refuse to give up on the possibility of something good growing from something painful. Our family isn't perfect, and our story isn't finished. But it's ours, and we're proud of what we've built together. In the end, that's all any family can hope for, to love each other well despite their imperfections, and to create a safe place where children can grow up knowing they're valued and wanted, no matter how complicated their origins might be.